Welcome to the session Songs from the Past. I am incredibly honored to welcome to the stage my close friends, Ralph Simon, Fernando Garibay, and OG Arabian Prince. Happening.
Testing.
Yeah. All right.
I am so happy to see this happening. I used to put together the program for the Future Blockchain Summit for the last 5 years, and this is the pinnacle of my career, I would say. Can't believe that these three men just landed in my lap, were introduced to me in various circumstances, and I don't think anyone here realizes the extent of the historical moment we are witnessing right now.
Check.
Historical.
Hysterical.
And hysterical. So we got more than 3 generations, I suppose, and between the three men here, they pretty much shaped pop music as we know it, starting with Ralph Simon, who founded Jive Samba, that goes all the way from Village People, AC/DC, Def Leppard, onto Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. And then he reinvented himself, becoming founder of Mobilium, the first global mobile phone ringtone marketplace. And here we have OG Arabian Prince. He is the most famous man you never heard of. He co-founded N.W.A. and co-produced Straight Outta Compton with Dr.Dre. And if it hadn't been for this man here, rap music would not sound the way it does today.
That's true.
And Fernando, he was introduced to me by my friend Dejer Molnar, the inventor and crazy aeronautics engineer. And when he was introduced to me, and he said, I saw the whole list of artists he's worked with, from saying, like, he produced Lady Gaga's first 2 albums, U2, Sting, Whitney Houston. I saw a photo of him, and it's like, that guy's too young to have worked with this many people. This can't be true. So I said, like, maybe I can speak to him in a couple of weeks. I checked him out, and next thing I know, I was like, this guy, he's the real deal. So we were together in New York with DJ Alok, and speaking at the UN headquarters. I just have to say that. And here we are for 2 hours to talk about music creation, technology, and this is what's so magical about these 3 men on stage. They are pioneers, not just in discovering talent and developing talent and producing talent, but also merging technology in that whole process and also in the commercial side of it. And it's going to be really fantastic to see Fernando and AP be creating music and showing how technology is used in real time with AI, with the latest software. And so let's just riff on this. How do we start? I want to start by asking you, Ralph.
Yeah.
What's happening in music?
Well, there's a lot happening in music. First of all, the key thing of music the last few years specifically is streaming, and how streaming has really revolutionized, changed, transformed the global music everything. And if it wasn't for a Swedish company that was started by Daniel Ek, E-K, Ek, which in Dutch means I. Daniel Ek always had this vision. He was a data dog. He loved data. He loved data more than he loved his wife. And he loved data so much he felt that the music business needed to change and be streamed. And as a consequence of that, some 10 years ago, had started Spotify, actually more than 10 years ago, and Spotify now is the leading streaming company in the world, and of course others. Apple Music, obviously important because of being the music subsidiary of Apple. Deezer, which is a French company, actually owned by Sir Len Blavatnik, the well-known British entrepreneur who also owns Warner Music Group, and many other streaming companies that have started that have now taken the world's music. And how many new songs do you think are added to streaming platforms every day. Does anyone want to take a guess? No, 500 million would be a bit much. But every day, some 90,000 new songs. 90,000. So the question is, how does anyone have the time or the inclination or even the ability to listen to 10 new songs a day, never mind 90,000? But so streaming has been the most important. It's really changed everything. And if you look at the highest earning music artists in the world today, there is one who stands head and shoulders above anybody else. Just one artist who's there as the highest earning artist of the last few years. Who do you think that is? Any ideas? Michael Jackson? No. Unfortunately, he's decomposing. He's no longer composing. Anyone else? The Swifties get the question right. Taylor Swift, who will earn more than $1 billion from the work she's been doing on an incredible touring show called Eras, E-R-A-S. And interesting is this, she's just put out a movie of her live performance on Eras. It's already taken more than $100 million at the box office. It's going to be a sensation around the world. Taylor Swift, self-made woman, self-made writer and composer, and someone who's got a musical sensibility that is beyond compare. She is really the real exception of our age. So that's one of the key elements of music. The second thing is, in the music business, it always used to be that music royalties, record royalties from the sale of your music would be the biggest income earner for artists. That's now been changed because live music, live concerts are huge, huge business all over the world. Doesn't matter if you're in India, if you're in Saudi, if you're here in Dubai, but the live business is going through an incredible pickup and really important. And also the recorded music industry has now touched the highest point in the last 25 years of $49 billion business. $49 billion. It's grown tremendously over the last 10 years. Volume on this mic, please.
Yet artists are earning less and less, but at the same time, neither are the streaming platforms earning very much, despite their astronomical valuations. It'd be great to hear from Fernando and AP on this. We spoke about this a lot in our podcast recently.
Great, yeah. So a testament. So it was very interesting. My hopes are for the crowd that you get some insights to take into the innovation and entrepreneurial space with these facts from these legends. One of these facts being that in 2016, the music industry globally was only worth about $16 billion.
Correct.
Right? So you could imagine as us working on these pop stars, Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift, whoever, we are on the working end of that industry, and the return has changed. It used to be that when you were at signing AC/DC, Pink Floyd, Britney Spears, there was an era when there was an industry in which the creatives benefited from that time and space. And now, as of 2011, 2012, although streaming introduced a new technology onto the forefront, it also had an externality in which creatives could not earn a traditional industry, traditional economics just dissipated, essentially. And so we're going to share, I think, with permission, the history of where we came from, where we're at now, and where we're going along this passage through conversation and through music as well.
Yeah, I really want to hear about how the development of artistry changes. When we were talking about that yesterday, how record labels used to allow for years of gestation for an artist to shape, and now it's the timeline, the short period of ROI that's expected for launching an artist is completely different, and how that plays into creativity and the technology with that. I mean, we are at a tech conference at the end of the day.
Well, this is really interesting because Silicon Valley, the premier tech community in the U.S., has always mirrored the entertainment industry. So a lot of the models from studio model, incubator model came from the music industry, the producer model, etc. So there's a lot we can take away from here, from our conversation, I think would be really inspiring. And I do want to touch on those points as we go along.
Yeah. I mean, you in the movie Straight Outta Compton, you have the role where you're unnamed in the movie for various reasons, complicated. Maybe we could tell the story, what's real in there, and you had such a big role in introducing the technology and in the recording process.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting about how the music industry has changed is you have to kind of look at the financial aspect of it. Back in the day, it cost money to make a record, especially on the artist side. Like, Fernando and me, we are both I would say keyboard heads. We love analog synthesizers and keyboards and things like that. Today, now an artist can use a cell phone or iPad or something very simple to create music. When we were making music in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s, it cost a lot more to generate a song, right? So looking at that then and today now that people can generate songs on the fly, and what we're going to get into with AI, AI itself can generate songs, which is scary in one hand and actually amazing in the other. So we can actually touch on that as well.
Yeah, but I mean, this is similarity between when Sony Handycam recorders came out and the Blair Witch Project took place, and the attitude was like, now anyone can become a filmmaker, but films have gotten worse than they've ever been. I can barely finish watching a movie anymore. And like with AI, sure, you can flood the market with countless songs. It doesn't mean that it's easier getting heard. It's more difficult than ever to be heard.
I would love to address this point as when we qualify content, we want to qualify content on and eliminate the generational bias, right? We talked about this earlier. What is a generational bias? A generational bias in behavior economics is essentially the belief that a certain generation, your parents' music, was better than the next generation's, right? It's a bias we all make. It's implicit. But there are some true facts that are pointing that the engagement emotionally, limbic, affective, is lower on the content that is being produced through these platforms because it is essentially built for quantity, not essentially quality. If we define quality as limbic, emotional engagement, spiritual engagement, fulfillment, it's still measuring lower than it has been from look at MRI scans of this research, and you can see that the brain is not as engaged as it used to be, but there's something to be said about this in that this creates an opportunity, and looking at AI as a way to fast-track the creative process, but not eliminate it. And we're going to get to that point, too, as well.
You told me yesterday that to create a bond, it takes 1,000 hours to have like a family bond with someone. And I was thinking about that today.
Friendship, yes. So the Dunbar experiment.
Like when you have an album and you listen to that album, the whole story, and you have that connection with the artist, and you get into that, wavelength or the brain waves to bond with the artist and to develop that relationship. These days, like, you don't really do albums anymore. You don't really develop that strong bond,
right.
with the artist.
Very good point. So 60 hours on average to develop the beginning of a friendship. I think it's about 120 hours to develop a reasonably good friendship and 300 hours to develop a deep friendship. So how many hours? Okay, so who listens to, what's your favorite artist?
DJ Khaled.
Okay, how many hours do you spend, do you think, if you were to add it up, take a wild guess how many hours you spend listening to his music? Okay, so you have a deep relationship with the artist. So that could be I'm going to take a wild guess, but gauging from your physical response and your reaction to it, I'm going to say you are probably very deep friends with this artist. So if you look at the relationship from a Dunbar perspective, then you see you have a family member, and that family member can influence you in a very profound way. That's why essentially the premise that the creative was essentially content maker is outdated. And the premise that we're stating now with at least my institute is that the creative is projecting a different value to society than we could be aware of.
Totally right.
And that value is it's creating reality for people. It's creating relationships, it's creating ways to view the world. And that is the true value of the creative. And that's why this synergy here, what we're doing today, is very important to talk about in alignment with AI.
So what do you say about that, Ralph? When you developed the many artists over the years, how has it changed now in how you build that relationship with the audience?
Well, what has not changed is the process and the pursuit of trying to come up with a major hit song. Now, there are some hits that were written in as little as 15 minutes. There's some hits that took years to write and to perfect. And there's some hits that are really a product of other fashions. For example, electronic dance music is a huge, huge area of the modern music style, and it's all built around a rhythmic pattern, 128 beats per minute. Does anybody here in the audience know why 128 beats per minute is an important rhythm? Anybody want to give an idea why? The effects of the brain are close but no cigar. Say louder. That's one of the things, but it's not exactly the reason. The reason is your heart beats at 128 beats in a minute. And so what the early pioneers of electronic dance music wanted to do was to try and establish a rhythm that would be in connection with people's heartbeats in the club. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so the resting heart rate is 60 beats per minute on average for a human being. So 128 is almost double, and that means that you're working out. So you have a physiological response in which you have a feedback loop that when you smile, you make yourself happy. So you have a neurophysiological response. So yes.
Very good. So in terms of creating new material, let's think of some contemporary examples of great, great artists. How many of you are from India and Pakistan? How many of you from India and Pakistan have ever heard of Arijit Singh? Now, Arijit Singh is an incredible artist, writes beautiful, amazing songs. How many of you have heard of Ed Sheeran? Ed Sheeran is a self-made man, self-made writer, self-made incredible songwriter and writer of hits, and he can write just like ringing a bell. He can write so quickly. He is very prolific, and one of the big tests if you're an artist or someone creative, how do you keep doing things at quality, deep quality level, but on a consistent basis? Elton John, over 50 years, has done that dozens and dozens of times. Madonna performed last night in London in front of 20,000 people at the O2 Arena, and in her performance, 2.5 hours of performance, nearly 3, she sang 40 songs, each one of which was a hit. Here's a woman who's 65 singing 40 songs that everybody knows. How many of you are Madonna fans? Those two guys there. Anyone else? No, those two young ladies from... They're not Madonna fans. I think they like Arabian Prince. Arabian Prince, you've been involved with some amazing work, and the way that you've always also seen the role of the DJ being a very important creator of music in the modern era.
Yeah, and something interesting, mentioned that, Fernando's a DJ, I'm a DJ. For some reason, being a DJ on stage, watching the response of a crowd of people, like we were, I'm not going to tell you what hotel we're staying in because I don't want you guys coming knocking on my door, but we went looking into one or two of the different nightclubs last night in the hotel, and the response from the audience, just sitting there for 5 or 10 minutes, listening to the music that they responded to, actually gives us as DJs an upper hand on what type of music that we create, right? And if you remember, a label mate of mine, Dr. Dre, would actually sample Indian rhythms. He got in trouble for it, but he would make hits. He would sample Indian rhythms to make hit records. I mean, I think one of the songs, the Truth Hurt song, right? Him and DJ Quick did. And they would find hit records in other countries and turn them into hip-hop records. Because we already knew that they were hit records. But we could take that sound and that style and bring it to a new generation of music.
Right, because it was market proven, right?
Yes.
Essentially. So I'll give you some background on where we come from a historical perspective, so evolutionary perspective. Music predates any other language, right? So essentially music is how we first started to communicate as evolving beyond primates, as we heard earlier. But we've evolved, and so we started making these musical sentences. That's how we communicated, which then led to linguistic development of formal language. So over time, that we lost the ability of this knowledge transfer that goes beyond words. So words only capture a spectrum of communication. We communicate through scent. We communicate through micro-expressions, posture. There's so much depth, but we also communicate through sound. And music is the last frontier that still survived and the most powerful way to communicate. I argue the most powerful way to communicate. So when we look at why music is still so important, is because it allows us to, it gives us, maybe perhaps non-songwriters, maybe who consider themselves non-creative, access to our emotions in a way that language doesn't, formal language. It gives us access to our spirituality in the ways that maybe not the traditional methods. It gives us access to ourselves and our unconscious that normally probably we wouldn't have access to. So that's the interesting part of what music can do as a technology. Now, as a modern technology, we're constantly exploring here what distribution that looks like, right?
Yeah. I mean, I want to touch on two things. Like, when we had our conversation, we were saying that distribution is so key to having a hit. It's everything, right? But before we go into that, I want to point something out that I just reflected on here. I mean, the three of you have worked so closely with the image of artists. I mean, some of the most truly innovative image and redefinition, of, like starting with Village People, right? And AC/DC, Def Leppard. When you think of them, when the image that comes to mind is this incredible showmanship, right? And the fashion around it, and of course Lady Gaga. But I mean, N.W.A. sort of like laid the whole groundwork for what the attitude of rap music is, right? And so, like, sure, of course, music is what it is, right? But I want to hear from you, like, aligning the image and being in tune with your time to get an audience.
I've got a good question that I'd like to pose, because this, I think, is will instruct everybody as to how this works. The Arabian Prince and Fernando both were born in South Central Los Angeles. That's a long way from Dubai, halfway around the world. South Central LA. What do you think it was? Both of you coming from that one neighborhood, not a big neighborhood in LA. LA is a big city, 9 million people. What was it that provoked in each of you this incredible, original, creative drive to make music that touched the world in a way that politicians never could?
That's right. That's a key point. That the unique connector to all of us is we all inspired each other. So we didn't know this, but so I was inspired by Pink Floyd, Ozzy Osbourne, these extraordinary power acts that you signed, Mutt Lange, right? And so when I was growing up, I grew up in a very crime-ridden community, and essentially we were exposed to British music, Morrissey, Smith, and this British music changed the way we saw the world, because as we were third world, I'm first generation American, but we're third world, and we were taught not to show our emotions. We never could show our emotions. We had to be very machismo, very formal all the time. And this created this appetite. And then we heard Dr. Dre and N.W.A. in our neighborhoods, and we were exposed to, as a community, that we can reject societal norms. We can reject suppression from law enforcement, specifically in Los Angeles, and we can adopt also compassion and empathy from these British artists that were showing that it's okay to be vulnerable. And so from there, from your artists that you signed, led the beginnings of my understanding of the world through music, and then better understanding as a young adult, a teenager, is through the music you created.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes, us coming from the inner cities, we grew up listening to the music of the inner city. And, with the riots and the crime in the inner city, a lot of the music that my parents and my uncles and cousins and neighbors listened to was music that was made to make you feel a certain way so that you didn't think about the harsh things that were going on in the inner city. So when I produce music now, a lot of the times I think back to the childhood and the music that I listened to and how it made me feel. And now I want to take that feeling that I had as a child and put it in music so that future generations can feel the same thing that we felt in the inner cities.
Now let's bring this back to branding. So when you were developed some of the most prolific, iconic artists of all time, brand is how we saw the imaging, how we saw an artist, right? It's integral because when we were kids, we aspire to be like the ones we look up to. But you must inspire to be able to develop a brand, right? It's synergetic, but so how much did branding play a part of the integral beginning of development for act like Ozzy Osbourne, act like the many incredible acts you worked with?
I don't think that branding was a feature to begin with, because what was important was to find songs that could touch people emotionally and touch them all over the world. And then eventually, as the artists started to perform, some people would say that when Ozzy Osbourne was supposed to have bitten the head of a bird, of a pigeon, and eaten the head, which he didn't do actually, but that was the story that went around, that really spread his story, and people were rather scared of this Ozzy Osbourne character. He's actually a very nice guy. He's just very straightforward. He loves football, he loves drinking, he loves his wife and his children, but today things are a little bit different. If you look and try and analyze Taylor Swift and what she's done, first and foremost, she has incredible consistency. Over a 2-year period, she's written maybe 30 songs, each of which has got its own value, melodically, structurally, instrumentally, that she puts across. Very few can do that. Now, where do you find that? In the Arab language world. We'd mentioned DJ Khaled. He's from America, but he's also somebody that's now established a big following all through the Maghreb, and certainly in the UAE, a lot of support for him. But in today's world, things also move so much faster, because the way that things move, it takes you time to build, but once you get going, once you have hits, then boy, is it quick. And also, it's quick for people to love you, and it's quick for people to forget you. So it's a short hill and a fast downhill.
But yeah, talking about Ozzy Osbourne and AC/DC, there's an anecdote that goes, they got asked, you've been accused of recording the same album 15 times. They say, no, that's a lie. It's been 16 times. And is it a big part of creativity, just keeping this discipline of maintaining a creative output? It's extremely hard to follow up your successful debut. And also, I mean, many artists, they do their best work very young, and they fail to reinvent themselves, or if they not reinvent themselves at all, put out an album of the same caliber.
Well, you want to take that? You've done it several times. I can set this up. So when there's certain expectations an artist has when they've made a connection with the audience, back to the relationship with the audience, it's your best friend, it's someone you look up to. So this is an expectation. When you break that if Taylor Swift decides to do punk music from the 70s, right, it's a very deviation from where she came from, what the expectations in the public. But if that deviation is set up like we did with Lady Gaga, right? She can do jazz music and do electronic dance music, right? At the flip of a switch, because she set that relationship expectation with her audience. That was strategic. That was something she wanted to do. She wanted a career that can do that.
So here's a question specifically for yourself. You were involved with Lady Gaga recording a song called Born This Way. Can you just give us a little bit of background as to how you were right there in the studio with her? You were there and when she really constructed that song. Give us a little bit of background, because did you know when you were recording that what incredible impact that would have around the world?
Fortunately and unfortunately, I did, because I saw that. So I was fortunate to be able to pick the artists that I worked with, and they were able to pick me. And when I was called to work with her, I knew that she was in a place where she had massive influence. And she played me a couple of her songs, and she just had the beginnings of Born This Way. And I realized this is not just a song, this is a civil rights song, right? It was a beginnings of a musical that would play out throughout the world, which I understood would happen. So to answer your question, I have a habit of picking projects that have global impact through our artists and our work. So that's no accident. So we just then develop those albums and that content to do that.
Yeah, and I want to segue that. You were there when AC/DC recorded Back in Black.
Right.
Did you know what impact that would have on rock when it was recorded?
Well, how many of you here are fans of or know of AC/DC? Just a few of you? Well, there was an interesting story. AC/DC's most successful record is called Back in Black. And why is it called that? Well, because before that album was made, their lead singer, whose name was Bon Scott, died in a drinking accident, unexpected, and the band had to decide, from Australia, whether they would continue. They took a decision that they would, and they would come up with songs that would basically say they are back, and they back in black, meaning that they're mourning the loss of the singer. They found a new singer and came up with the song. They went to the Bahamas in the Caribbean to record the album and the track with a producer called Robert John Lang, and he knew when he was recording that particular song, it had a chorus where they sing, "Back in Black!" Well, something like that.
Very good, yeah.
And of course, it's now sold over 40 million albums. 40 million.
The best-selling rock album of all time, still, I believe, in terms of hard rock.
Absolutely it is, yeah.
Not me, it was them. But anyway, it was just interesting. The story of the singer's death and the way that they came back and decided, we are back and we are back in black, but we're going to be black in gold in the months to come because our records will sell gold copies. 40 million. Do you know how much a musician makes out of selling 40 million of an album?
$2.
Well, you know that from what you did with N.W.A. and all of the stuff you've been involved with, and also your career as a DJ. As a DJ, how do you think of constructing your style and your DJing and how you work? Because it's not as if you're writing the songs, but you're writing atmospheres and experiential music.
Yeah, that's what it is, and I'll just say this: there's DJs and then there's DJs. There's DJs that sit in a room and they formulate and practice a song or a set, and they go out and they come to entertain you guys and play what they want to play. It may not be what you want to hear or what you want to hear, but they play what they play. And then you have a DJ who comes in the club and he has an idea of what he wants to play, but he reads the crowd and realizes that what he thought that he was going to play doesn't work. So therefore, he has to change up what he plays to make people happy. And that's the same thing when you're making music as well. There's a formula of music. And most successful artists, most successful producers, Ralph, Fernando, know that formula. And you use that formula over and over and over again until it changes. And it may not change dramatically, it may change slightly, or there may be a monumental shift in music. And like you said, you set it up as an artist or as a producer with your fan base. Like Taylor Swift could not come out tomorrow and start doing rap.
No,
She couldn't do that.
she couldn't do that.
But she could slowly but surely add a rapper to a song here or there.
So this is interesting. So I just read an article on this specifically, a case study on this. That when you look at market forces that drive content, you see a change in the way content is made. So case in point, there's this argument that this generation's music, again, is less satisfying. And back to this point, well, we have to get quicker to the hooky parts a lot faster than before because the algorithm can detect whether there's a contagion effect a lot quicker. So the way music is being written, it's being written a lot shorter than it used to be. So quicker access points and quicker surface level engagement. Right, so you've seen that. So it's how genres have been shaped. But so when you talk about formulas for art, I like to think about what's bigger than formulas and algorithms. Power laws. Power laws. Great art throughout history have power laws, and these power laws that's the one thing that's sustainable over time. So a power law, a Pareto's law, like 80% of the music we listen to is created by 20% of the artists around the world, right? So these power laws are important to pay attention to.
Yeah, talking about rap and crossing over, I've always wanted to ask you, didn't N.W.A. almost work with Guns N' Roses once?
Yeah, we actually almost did an album with Guns N' Roses. Axl Rose used to be on stage wearing N.W.A. hats, and we sat down and tried to work with them and talked about it. But, you know, the power of record companies is another thing that this man can talk about. And the two record companies that we were on could not figure out what label would put out the album. So that's why that never happened.
What a tragedy. I would have loved to hear that album.
Oh, yeah, and I said that.
Oh, my God.
It should have been on both. Both labels should have put the album out.
Oh.
You know, but
we're going to be hearing some mashups on the 10X stage pretty soon.
yeah, we got something coming.
Can I just ask the two of you a question? Everybody here has got certain DJs that they follow or that they like. And when I think of DJs, I think of Fatboy Slim, very well-known British DJ. I think of DJ Shadow, DJ Quick. Which DJs do you think are up there like the Rolls Royce of DJs? Ooh. Who would you think, if you had to think of 3 or 4 names of DJs that make a difference, that have moved the needle forward, that have changed the industry and changed the perception of a DJ? A DJ is not just someone that twiddles the knobs of a sound desk. A DJ is an artist with great, great skill, taste, and insight. Who do you think you guys revere as DJs?
Two different eras, so you're probably coming. I know what you're going to think. I know which one.
There's this guy named Arabian Prince I like.
He's good.
The obvious.
He's a pretty good
is
DJ.
good.
He does stuff here and there. But no, so I would have to say, I have to go back and, you know, I'm really, really into, from the old school, I'll still say Dr. Dre. He's an amazing DJ. You know, my buddy Egyptian Lover, that's from the old school stuff. But if I have to go modern day DJs, you know, my buddy Steve Aoki, love Steve Aoki.
Steve Aoki, great.
Don't go see him up close because he'll throw a cake at you and, you know, hit you in the face with a cake. I'm really digging, you know, I love Skrillex. Skrillex actually changed a style of music.
Right.
You know, because there was EDM and then there was Skrillex. And Skrillex just kind of warped the sound of EDM for a while. So I love Skrillex. I love the fact that you got your dead mouses and your marshmallows.
Oh, yeah.
Who can put buckets on their head and make lots of money. So, yeah, you know.
For me, I did like what Fatboy Slim, Moby, and all those guys were doing during that era. But I think there's a critical line that was drawn when Daft Punk started entering the market space. And so Daft Punk created not only a genre, but specifically referencing older acts, but they created the story for a DJ. That, I think, legitimately created the artist story for the DJ. Now you have a world that they built. And then to follow that world, they built these two characters. And that's kind of a hero's journey of DJing, right? This is this quest that they put on to discover who they are, or it could be anybody, it could be me, right? So that connection they created with loops that were so special that when put together created this emotive experience. So I think that was a powerful moment in history.
And I have a really quick, funny joke. So when I was growing up as a DJ, I loved Moby, right? Loved Moby. And I was like, one day, I want to be as good as Moby when I get to his age. And then later on, I found I'm actually older than Moby. He just looks so old.
No. It's about the art.
Yeah, I love Moby too, but he's really a composer, and I mean, so musical in writing. I mean, Play is the first album, right?
Yeah, 1,000%.
How has being a DJ today? What skill sets are required, and what talking about creativity?
Programming, like, so the idea of algorithmic response to what you hear in your head and be able to execute. And we'll get into the segue into AI and why this is so important to understand. Getting into, DJs were always programming music. So in order to be a DJ, you have to make your own music. And over time, they became very prolific at equivalent to coding, but through music, right? Which is what we'll show you later with Ableton, et cetera, and how you make music. But it's still such a, you learn coding and programming in a way that's your instrument. And I think that was a big shift in music and with DJs.
Well, it's so funny, right? When the Swedish DJ that died a few years ago, that he did that Wake Me Up.
Avicii.
Avicii, yes. What an opportunity for him to bring back grass roots. What do you call it? Bluegrass, is it?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I mean, and Play. He made gospel popular
He did
just
a
by
song.
adding a beat.
He did a song with a friend of mine, Aloe Black. That was a huge
Aloe
hit.
Black.
Yeah.
How many of you have heard of Aloe Black?
Yeah, they know the song. Yeah. Beautiful song.
So these cross collaborations happen because they were engineered. That was engineered. So that was a record label, A&R at Interscope, at our friend, who heard a song, a country song, from not really country, but kind of pseudo country, from this artist named Aloe Black. And Avicii's team heard it, and they go, "We want that." But at the time, there were these rules for DJs where you couldn't break outside the norm, right? Back to this expectation with the artist and its audience, breaking that expectation, so that it's essential to move genres forward, to move even tech forward. Is you have to break ideologies, you have to break norms, in especially in culture, to do something different. And that's what he did to that example.
And I was so fascinated to hear that you grow up with ABBA music, and I mean, that's what you've done. I mean, I'm a big fan of Lady Gaga's first two albums, and I think Rolling Stone has named them as some of the best of the century so far, right? And I can really hear that in your production, like the mix of this heavy beat and the melody.
Thank you for sharing that. So I was named after ABBA. Here's why this means something to me. It might mean something to you. ABBA codified through the producers Bjorn and
Benny.
Bjorn,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
Bjorn Ulvaeus and
Yeah.
Benny Andersson.
So they took Western music and essentially made it better. They took the best parts of Motown, Bee Gees, rockabilly, and took it and formulated it into a verse, pre-chorus, chorus structure, which laid down the blueprint for the next 50 years of music. And so I was named after ABBA because my parents didn't have a name, and this random nurse named me. My father went out and bought every single ABBA record there was. I learned this subconsciously as first records I heard were ABBA, and I'm like, this makes a lot of sense to me. And so I replicated that process for every pop artist that I work with.
You know, that's so great that you'd mentioned this, and I thought this is a good point in this session to talk about artificial intelligence. And the reason is there's a whole big, new, important era that we are moving fast into and towards. And one of the first examples of really great artificial intelligence has actually been with ABBA in London. They built a theater, 3,000 seats, and developed digital twins of each of the members of ABBA. They are called not avatars, but abatars. It's called The Voyage, and you've got these 4 digital characters playing live with a live band, an incredible show where you see these avatars working. And they react, it is so lifelike, you swear you could touch the clothing that they're wearing. But the reason I mention artificial intelligence is, how many of you have heard of any of the artificial intelligence companies, like, for example, ChatGPT-4? How many of you have used that? You've all used it. How many of you have heard of Stability AI?
Wow.
Stability AI, very important because they're now taking video and making video do what large language models do with language. So, anybody got any views on AI?
So yeah, we could clear the reality of what's happening now, and for the next, I think, make a prediction. As AI, diffusion LLM, and more models will be introduced, come into our forefront, our regular use day to day. It's out identifying that we are going to crave more of the human aspect. This they called, as Max Tegmark calls it, the homo sentient, the feeling human being, and this also leads us to then predict that we're going to require a more experiential exchange with AI and the world. So when we think about AI, especially in our fields, we look at it as to fast track our minimum viable product, fast track our minimum version of any creative endeavor, a film, a strategy, or a song. So I can give you examples of how we do this now.
Yes.
And our studio has been using AI now for, we were introduced actually by a friend of ours, Troy Carter, to the first voice cloning about in 2011. So we were very, very familiar with this. So now I bring you examples of it. I have Ariana Grande and Drake and Post Malone and Rihanna singing some of our songs I recorded in our studio through
let's
AI.
do that.
So it's nothing new for us. But what's new is that it's now a challenge to then clarify authorship, right? Which was another conversation we're going to get to later. What does it mean to be truly an author of anything at this point, right? And how do we tackle that question, which is very existential in this space and the future of making anything, right? Because again, we'll get into that.
I want to just on that point, right? If everyone's using the same software with AI, and I mean having a hit is about doing something that stands out and is original and human, as you say, wouldn't it be a competitive advantage then to not be using AI?
No, because essentially, well, let's look at this question. What is authorship? Authorship is creating new novelty, but it's based on the past, on your experiences, your childhood, legacy, everything. So it's redundant in a certain degree. Now, AI fast tracks that redundancy, that parity to a certain extent. And the combination, it used to be that you combine all your experiences, all your history, plus what you were exposed to, what you learned. All this creates your fingerprint as a creative. Now you have the access of the whole entire planet, all piece of knowledge that was onloaded over time online, in combination with your legacy of experiences. So when we think about authorship and what is truly original, well, I don't think we can ask that question anymore and give the answer we're looking to find, because as Einstein said, it's hard to solve. You can't solve the same problem from the mindset that created it. We must think beyond that. What is authorship? It has to be redefined.
So here's a question for all three of you. With AI, would it be correct in saying that with AI, you can't look for answers, you've got to look for questions that you can give the AI software, because the AI will give you the answers, true or false?
Well, I would say that the most effective prompters are people with understanding of how the brain works, understanding of how philosophy works, understanding of how literature has been created over time, how stories are told. Because if it's learning from the way we learned, which was the brain has learned its environment through the stories we've heard, basically in story form. As we know, we have, here's some nerdy science, but we have 12 hierarchical cortical structures. Each one's interpreting a story that we're depicting from our environment, and this is called behavioral determinism. So now look at this in a AI format, right? Imagine all the nuances that is picked up over time. So how do we extract that information from ChatGPT? Well, it's really on creating the most creative questions based on human experience to be able to inspire ChatGPT to give you those answers you're looking for. Hopefully answers you haven't even thought of looking for.
You know, this reminds me of what Elon Musk has been doing at Tesla. He's got 1 billion hours of video, of data from Tesla cars driving all around the world. He's putting that into AI, and the AI will determine what's going to be the safest way to drive, drawn from 1 billion hours of video. That's effectively taking AI and using that in transportation.
From an investment point, I would think that the most, if I were to aggressively pursue the capital markets, I would look for companies that are investing in data acquisition.
Data
Right?
acquisition.
Data acquisition, data management, data resources of any sort that can train AI, obviously, is what's called new oil.
Yep.
If I were to make a 5-year, 10-year prediction, I would say it is going to be the ability to use that data that we're all going to have access to creatively in novel ways. And we're talking about beyond originality, which is, again, what I call sui generis.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I think that too, one of the key things with AI is I often say, if you tell Alexa, make me a hit record, right? Make me a hit record, Alexa, go ahead. You don't know, Alexa can have all the information of every song in the world, but AI doesn't know what you want unless you know what to tell it. And if you don't know what to tell it, how does it calculate what's in your mind? So like you said, you have to give the AI the experiences, the things that you feel, that your sound, your style, all of these things, and then AI can maybe give you a suggestion. It can maybe give you a starting point of where you need to go.
So let me reframe that question. I would have asked myself, make me a hit record. What I'm really asking is, make me a record that would inspire and remind me of a childhood and how I can repair the trauma of my childhood in a way that I can experience life in a whole new way. Let me reframe myself as a new human being. Make me that song.
Yes.
See, that's humanity. That's philosophy. That's abstract thinking.
Good idea.
That's what the human's still very valuable at. You see?
Yeah.
That's prompting.
And that's why I think that the people who are scared of AI taking your jobs really don't have to be scared as of yet, because a person who uses AI as a tool still has to know how to use that tool. I can give everybody a hammer, right? But only certain people can use that hammer skillfully. Anybody can hammer a nail, but I've tried. Like, it's just, it's in there this way or whatever. But, with AI, you still have to be skillful, and you still have to know how to use that tool. So I think we are still, it's moving fast, but I think we're still 5 or 10 years away from serious AI, being able to change our daily life right now.
You agree with that?
No. As a friend, no, I think we're actually a few years away from evolving into a species that recognize that AI can give us the tools to be more human. That's the problem that we're seeing now is as we invite that tech into our world for day-to-day activities, especially mobile lifestyles, we become disconnected with, again, what makes us human, our human empathic, our all spiritual, our human connectivity, that all disengages. And as that disengages with our being, we have this deficit. Well, we can't evolve, thousands of years of evolution, right, in a single 2 years, right? So we need to catch up with that aspect, and AI is pointing that out. It will point that out more further and further aggressively. I think that's the big change that's coming.
But wouldn't you say that music is about communicating a feeling? And I want to go back to what you were saying, that today it's so much cheaper to record an album. As recently as 30 years ago, it would cost you a lot, and the stakes were very high when you went into a studio. And Led Zeppelin famously recorded their first album in 16 hours, and they really these restrictions allowed them to capture the feeling in the moment, and you hear it in the music. And I want to, you told me yesterday that you recorded Lady Gaga's Born This Way while you were on the road with her. And I just thought about that just now, that you must have been in the moment with her, capturing that feeling. And could you have recorded and captured that if you weren't there and
Let's put it this way, this video of me creating those feelings, inspiring those feelings. So what we had to do is, she came off stage and she was so tired that I kind of had to shock her into remembering one of the most traumatic moments that's happened to her, right? Because she was not in a place where she wanted to create. She just got off stage, she's exhausted, but I only have a window of time to capture her voice. So I had to just remind her. So how we create, and I'll show you another example if I can for a second, of you've experienced this, you do this. How do we write music? How do we consistently make hit records? How have we done this over time and time again? Yet anybody with a laptop still struggles to make any dent in the market space with the hit song. Let's take distribution out of the equation. Let's take Spotify, all that out of the equation. How do you get to content that scales? Well, does anyone want to try this? All right. Hey, can we get another mic?
Yes, we'll get a mic to this gentleman. Got a mic? Do you have a mic for this gentleman?
Okay, so
We'll give him a mic.
All right. So the way we do this, and this is a tool that I can pass on to you, and essentially, when we get an artist to engage emotionally, that's when they're present. When they're present, they can create. Until that happens, we have nothing.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a few questions. Okay. So this is what we do with artists. If I have Rihanna or whoever in the room, the last thing she wants to do is work with a songwriter or producer. Last thing, right? Because we're like a doctor, and they have their doctor's visit, right? So, but again, our success is determined by them singing our songs or the songs that we create together. So they come in the studio. These are the artists. They don't want to be here, and I have to get them to a place where they remember why they got into this business of being so delusional, of being the 0.01% of the entire planet who could be a pop star. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I do this. This is a magic cell phone, and this magic cell phone can call your 7-year-old self. So this is going to call your 7-year-old self. I want you to tell this cell phone what you would tell your father as a 7-year-old self to do differently.
Yeah.
On the mic.
Well, I never had a father.
Okay.
I was born just...
Your mother.
My mother. Maybe to, of course, in some moments where I express myself just by myself, and I had no one to talk to. And my music was the expression.
What's one piece of advice you would give your mother as a 7-year-old self?
Well, that's a hard question, but I would say just take care more. Yeah.
So your face, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Can we give him a hand?
Thank you.
That's what I'm talking about. So to give a true, honest answer, I can see his whole body posture changes. He's kinder. His face expressions change. As producers, we need to be able to read all that, inspire that moment, and then create from that perspective. Now we have a song to write. Now what we would do is talk about a story of forgiveness, a story of understanding, right? And that's how extraordinary music is made. And time over time, the world doesn't get to see this. But if we can learn from the creatives in this way, I think it's a key point to not only everything I do with my institute, but everything we all do and have done with our pop stars. Music has the ability to shift our mind and create reality, a new reality.
Who has heard the song called Paint the Town Red by Doja Cat? Who's heard that song? One gentleman there?
Who here knows who Doja Cat is?
Yeah, who knows who Doja Cat is? Doja Cat is not a cat. Well, she is a cat, but she's a different kind of cat.
Hey, I just got word here on my phone that you're going to be performing now in 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back and do our production.
You want to do our demo?
Sorry?
We do our demo now? Or
No, we come back here and do the demo. We have all the time in the world.
We have to go to another
You
stage?
guys are on 10X and 5.
We have to go to 10X
Come
stage
on over,
in
everybody.
5 minutes down here. So come over. We're going to play some music for you guys and have a quick party, and then we'll come back and finish up. How about that?
So we're gonna do a quick minute of a couple songs. We're gonna showcase in the other section there, and then we're gonna come back and do our AI demo. I'm gonna play you some songs that we've written in the studio, and we're gonna have Ariana Grande, Drake, Rihanna, Post Malone sing, AI versions of our songs.
Incredible.
All right, 10X, here we come.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.